Hey guys, what's up? My name is Shakira, and these hips don't lie. No, I'm just joking. My name is not Shakira. I'm Brittany Lee, the Bio Geek, but today I will be covering the hips, and I won't be telling any lies today. So the hips are a set of paired, irregularly shaped bones that make up the central portions of the hip girdle. So the upper leg bone, the femur, is going to articulate here within this hip bone. So I know orienting yourself to these bones can be really tricky. So I'm going to help orient you guys to them so you know what's anterior, posterior, superior, inferior, and just get your bearings across this bone. I'm going to talk about how 3 bones actually make up this bone: the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. And then I'm going to go back and talk about specific landmarks that are contained within each of these bones. So here we go. So the hip bones are actually made up of 3 fused bones. If you were to take this bone and split it in half here, the superior portion of this is going to be your ilium. So up here is the ilium. Now the bottom half of the bone is going to be 2 bones. So if you split this into anterior and posterior portions, the anterior portion of the bottom half is going to be the pubis, or the pubic bone. The posterior half of the bottom half, or the posterior quarter, is going to be the ischium. So if you were to put your hands on your hips in the front, what you're feeling is this anterior superior portion of your ilium. If you were to go ice skating and fall and bust your butt, you would be falling on the ischium. So now what I want to do is I want to go through the different parts of each of these bones, the different landmarks of each of these bones, so that you guys can understand and get them right on your exams. So first we have to understand how we're going to orient these bones in 3-dimensional space. So while they're connected to the 2 halves, it's a lot easier to do because in the center it's connected by the pubic symphysis, and then in the posterior portion is where that sacrum would sit in the back here. Now, if you only had one of these hip bones, let's pretend like we only have one, you would have to figure out how to orient it in 3-dimensional space in order to determine what your individual bones and landmarks are. Now, this rough surface here is going to go on the medial aspect of the bone. This is the auricular surface of the ilium, and that's going to articulate with the auricular surface of the sacrum. Let's show you guys that real quick. So the auricular portion of the ilium is going to articulate with the auricular portion of the sacrum, as seen here. So you want to make sure that that auricular portion is going to be on the medial surface of this bone. Now, second is going to be the acetabulum. The acetabulum is going to be where the head of the humerus articulates into the hip socket. Now, because the head of the femur is going to be facing medially into the center of the midline of the body, the acetabulum is going to need to focus or point laterally so that the head of that femur can articulate. So if you point this structure posteriorly and medially, the auricular surface, and the acetabulum goes laterally, you should have a pretty good orientation of your hip bones. Now that we have them oriented in 3-dimensional space, let's talk about the different landmarks on each. So first and foremost, we're going to have our iliac fossa. The iliac fossa is going to be located on the medial surface of the bone, and it's going to be where one of the muscles, the iliacus, is going to sit in this fossa. We talked about the auricular surface being the medial surface at which the sacrum articulates. The next set of landmarks are going to be spines, all located on the ilium. Now, I like to do these together because they're all named for their anatomical location. So you have 2 that sit on the anterior surface, 2 that sit on the posterior surface, 2 that sit more superiorly, and 2 that sit more inferiorly. So one was going to be your anterior superior iliac spine. Then you're going to have an anterior inferior iliac spine. Then you'll have a posterior superior iliac spine, and then a posterior inferior iliac spine. So superiors, inferiors, anteriors, posteriors. So posterior, superior, posterior, inferior, anterior, inferior, anterior, superior. Y'all got that? Great. So then also located on your ilium is going to be the greater sciatic notch. You can see this both from the anterior and the posterior surface. So the greater sciatic notch is going to be this notch where the greater sciatic nerve is going to pass. Next, we're going to have the iliac crest, which is going to be this elevated ridge that runs from the anterior border all the way to the posterior border of that ilium. I mentioned the acetobulum here, which is going to be a landmark that's shared by both the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. Next, let's move on to the ischium. The ischium only contains 3 landmarks that you have to identify. Now, just as you had the spines of the ilium, you're also going to have one single spine of the ischium, like you see here. This is going to be called the ischial spine. Located just underneath the ischial spine, you're going to have your lesser sciatic notch. Just like we had the greater sciatic notch on the ilium, we have the lesser sciatic notch on the ischium. Now, the greater notch is both larger and superior, and the lesser notch is both smaller and inferior. So make sure you keep those 2 separated. Next, we're going to have the ischial tuberosity. And the ischial tuberosity is going to be this rough projection of the bone on the posterior surface of that ischium. Now, the last bone we're going to talk about is going to be the pubis. The pubis has a few different landmarks we have to be able to identify. So at the center where the 2 pubis bones meet, you're going to have the pubic symphysis. That's going to be connected by a little piece of cartilage that's going to separate the 2 hip bones from each other. On the medial surface, you're going to have the pubic crest. So the pubic crest will be where the pubic symphysis comes to meet. And then on the lateral surface here, you're going to have the pubic tubercle. Now, if you notice, the tubercle is more of a rounded projection, whereas the crest is a ridge of bone as seen here. So the crest is a ridge. The tubercle is a rounded knob as you see here. Next, we're going to have these arm-like projections. So these arm-like projections are called rami, or ramus for singular. So a ramus is an arm-like projection that's going to connect 2 portions of the bone. So you have one that is more superior and a ramus that is more inferior. So as you may think, this is called your superior ramus, and this will be called your inferior ramus. Now, the last landmark of the pubis that you have to identify is the big, dense, bony part here, which is going to be the body of the pubis. So now let's go ahead and run those back really quickly. So this is our orientation, viewing it from an anterior view. So up here we have the anterior superior iliac spine here, anterior inferior, then back here, posterior superior in here, posterior inferior. Very good. This notch here was the greater sciatic notch, so that makes this one down here the, let me turn it this way. This is the greater sciatic notch. This is the lesser sciatic notch, right? And this bone is which one? The ischium. Perfect. This shallow indentation we had here on the anterior surface of the ilium, iliac fossa. Perfect. And then up here we had the iliac crest. Very good. Medial and posteriorly was the auricular surface. Very good. This was the superior ramus of the pubis. This bony, small circular bony projection was the pubic tubercle. Very good. In the center, more medially on the pubis, we had the pubic crest. Very good. And this knob-like cavity here where the head of the humerus articulates was called the acetabulum. Perfect. You guys did really good on that. Just as a note, don't forget to orient your hip bones in the right orientation. So remember that acetabulum points towards the outside, and the auricular surface, this part in the back, should face posteriorly towards the back and medially towards the middle. All right, guys, I hope this video has helped make these hips a little bit easier to understand. I know they can be a little tricky, but just remember that auricular surface should go more medially, that acetabulum should go more laterally, and that pubis is gonna situate up in the front. So it's just a little something like that. So thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, send this video to your friends, even show your teachers. Be like, hey, yo, there's this girl who teaches anatomy online, and if you get lazy sometimes, like maybe you could just play her videos in class. I'm just kidding, your teacher probably won't do that, but it's worth a try. So thanks again for stopping by. I'll see y'all next time with the femur.